Welcome back, global pop culture enthusiasts. Ever wondered what happens when 7 absolute icons who literally conquered the music industry drop their fierce stage personas behind closed doors? We see them breaking records, but who truly rules the dorm with pure, unfiltered affection? Today, we are unlocking the ultimate psychological countdown of BTS. Who holds the hidden crown for weaponizing their charm? Who secretly gets pampered like absolute royalty by the others? Let's dive straight into the definitive OT7 countdown.
Number 7. RM, the god of destruction, secretly pampered like royalty. When we talk about the one who acts the least intentionally spoiled, but still somehow manages to get treated like an absolute baby by the rest of the group, we absolutely have to start with the monumental pillar of BTS, our formidable leader, Kim Namjoon, famously known as RM. Now, wait just a minute. You might be sitting there staring at your screen thinking to yourself, how on earth does the guy who delivered a historic, earth-shattering speech at the United Nations General Assembly, the musical genius boasting an IQ of 148, the man who single-handedly carries the colossal weight of leading the biggest music phenomenon in modern history, end up on a list about being spoiled? Well, dear viewers, this is exactly where the glittering, flawless illusion of the stage meets the chaotic, beautifully endearing reality of their everyday lives. Because, believe it or not, behind closed doors, RM is not just the intimidatingly smart, well-spoken leader who commands the attention of global audiences. He is basically a giant, clumsy, profoundly adorable golden retriever who requires the constant 24/7 supervision of 6 incredibly patient and fiercely protective men. We all know him affectionately as the infamous God of Destruction, a legendary title he earned almost immediately after debut because absolutely anything he touches, whether it's an expensive pair of sunglasses, a crucial stage prop, a sturdy door handle, or even his own clothing, somehow mysteriously shatters, snaps, or disintegrates into thin air right before our very eyes. But here is the fascinating psychological twist that firmly places him at number 7. RM doesn't act spoiled in the traditional, bratty, demanding, buy me a luxury sports car kind of way. Instead, his sheer clumsiness and pure absent-mindedness have naturally conditioned the other 6 members to pamper him relentlessly, creating a unique environment where he is allowed to be totally helpless in the most endearing way possible. Let's take a nostalgic trip down memory lane to the absolute peak of his clumsiness, the unforgettable, dramatic incident during Bon Voyage Season 1 in Northern Europe. There, our brilliant leader managed to achieve the unthinkable by losing his passport in Sweden, forcing him to abruptly pack his bags and return to South Korea alone while the rest of the members continue the trip without him. You would logically think a mistake of that magnitude would cause massive frustration, anger, or at least a severe scolding, but the members simply sighed, gave warm hugs, and accepted with fond resignation that this is just the chaotic reality of loving Kim Namjoon. Over the years, this dynamic has evolved into a beautiful, unspoken rule within the BTS household. Namjoon leads them fiercely in the professional world, but they lead him safely through basic human survival. Have you ever watched a Run BTS cooking episode? It is pure, unadulterated comedic gold mixed with heartwarming affection that will make you laugh until your stomach hurts. Whenever Namjoon even glances at a sharp kitchen knife or a hot stove, you can instantly spot Jin's maternal instincts flaring up to maximum capacity, practically screaming across the room to banish him from the cooking station before a major disaster strikes. The members literally spoil him by refusing to let him do household chores because the risk of him burning down the kitchen, breaking all the plates, or accidentally slicing his own finger off is simply too overwhelmingly high. So what does our brilliant leader do? He stands comfortably on the sidelines offering cute, encouraging commentary and perhaps awkwardly making a cup of coffee while the others tirelessly chop, boil, and fry, eventually serving him a perfectly plated meal like he's a visiting king who must not be burdened burdened with peasant tasks. And let's not even get started with the legendary AirPod saga. Do you realize how much you have to be babied and indulged for your friends to just casually accept that you have lost not one, not two, but literally over 30 pairs of expensive wireless earphones? Any normal friend group would stage a serious financial intervention, but the BTS members just collectively roll their eyes with fond, exasperated smiles, knowing deep down that their leader's brain is so overloaded with producing chart-topping melodies, writing profoundly philosophical lyrics, and strategizing the group's global future that he simply doesn't have the mental RAM left to remember where he placed his tiny electronics. It's not just about the lost items, though. It's about the constant physical protection he receives on a daily basis. Yoongi, the group's quiet, stoic protector, is constantly in the background, silently fixing the things Namjoon breaks, acting like a profoundly indulgent older brother who refuses to let the leader feel guilty about his destructive habits. Jimin, who is physically much smaller in stature, has been caught on camera numerous times literally pulling Namjoon by his belt loop or the back of his shirt in crowded airports, guiding him like a lost toddler on a leash so he doesn't accidentally wander off into the wrong terminal or walk face first into a glass door. J-Hope, the group's sunshine and unofficial co-leader, meticulously checks Namjoon's belongings, reminding him of his schedule and making sure he hasn't forgotten his phone or wallet for the 100th time. Even the younger members, Taehyung and Jungkook, who usually cause their own unique brand of relentless chaos, instinctively step up to take care of his belongings, making sure his bags aren't left behind in random waiting rooms or concert backstages. Do you remember the iconic fake love era where Namjoon accidentally ripped Jungkook's shirt wide open during a live music show performance because his aggressive energy was simply too much for the fabric to handle? The members teased him relentlessly for it, turning his chaotic clumsiness into an epic inside joke, but they never once made him feel truly bad for it. This level of intense pampering is a very specific, deeply emotional kind of spoiling that speaks volumes about their unbreakable bond. The members know exactly how devastatingly heavy the invisible crown of leadership is. They know that when they are standing in front of hostile interviewers in foreign countries, struggling with language barriers, or when they are overwhelmed by the astronomical pressure of millions of expectant fans around the globe, Namjoon is the ultimate shield, who takes the hit for all of them. He flawlessly translates, he speaks with unparalleled eloquence, he deflects the negativity, and he fiercely protects his team from the harsh realities of the music industry. So, in return, they fiercely protect him from the mundane, everyday challenges of life. By cooking for him, finding his constantly lost items, and treating him like a fragile, brilliant, clumsy teddy bear, they are silently communicating a powerful, tear-jerking message. You carry the weight of the entire world for us, so we will carry you when you are tired. It's a beautiful, symbiotic relationship where the formidable leader is spoiled with endless acts of service, allowing him to momentarily drop his impossibly strong facade and just breathe. He acts spoiled by fully surrendering to their loving care, throwing a cute dimpled pout when he makes a silly mistake, and letting out that sheepish, innocent smile because he knows without a shadow of a doubt that his 6 devoted brothers will always clean up his messes, fix what he physically breaks, and lovingly feed him when he's hungry. He firmly sits at number 7 on this ranking because he genuinely tries his absolute best to be a responsible, independent adult who carries the world on his shoulders, but the pure, unfiltered love and overprotective pampering he receives from the rest of BTS undoubtedly makes him one of the most cherished and silently spoiled leaders in the history of the music industry, proving once and for all that sometimes the person who holds absolutely everything together is the one who desperately needs to be held the most.
Number 6. Suga, the fierce rapper turned Lil Meow Meow, secretly demanding absolute pampering. Have you ever watched a fierce, fire-spitting, hardcore hip-hop performance by August D, feeling the absolute chills running down your spine from his raw, unfiltered intensity, only to completely short-circuit when you see that exact same man pouting over a missing piece of tangerine in the backstage waiting room just minutes later? Welcome to the incredibly complex, mind-boggling, and delightfully contradictory universe of Min Yoongi, universally known as BTS's lead rapper, Suga, who dramatically claims the number 6 spot on our ultimate countdown.
Now, ask yourself this: how does the group's most savage, notoriously blunt, and brutally honest member, the man who supposedly prefers sleeping over human interaction, end up being described as secretly spoiled? If you truly believe Suga is just a cold, unapproachable rock who fiercely guards his independence, then you clearly haven't been paying close enough attention to the incredibly nuanced, heartwarming dynamics that operate beneath the surface of the BTS brotherhood. To the untrained eye, Yoongi is the solitary genius, the stoic grandfather of the group who groans when the youngsters make too much noise. But for seasoned armies and anyone studying the fascinating psychological ecosystem of these 7 superstars, it is glaringly obvious that he is, in fact, treated with the exquisite delicacy of a highly prized, extremely rare indoor cat by the other 6 members. The reality is that Yoongi absolutely relishes being babied, and he has masterfully trained his bandmates to indulge his every tiny whim without ever having to raise his voice or make a direct demand. Let's break down the sheer genius of his strategy. Remember those chaotic episodes of Run BTS where high-energy physical exertion is required, like jumping in freezing water or running around mud flats? While the maknae line is throwing themselves into the chaos and breaking a sweat, what is Suga usually doing? He's either standing completely still, blinking lazily like a sun-drenched kitten, emitting a tiny, high-pitched noise of complaint, or negotiating with the producers using his notoriously sharp wit. And almost instantly, as if programmed by magic, the other members scramble to make his life easier. He has famously weaponized his own perceived frailty and low energy levels to achieve a supreme level of comfort that the other members simply do not dare to question. Whenever there's a penalty to be served, all it takes is one sad, gummy smile, a slight crinkle of his eyes, or an unexpected, overwhelmingly devastating burst of aegyo, like his legendary pout or his tiny happy dances, for the entire group to immediately dissolve into helpless puddles and miraculously let him off the hook. Who else in the history of K-pop could get away with openly stating that his ultimate dream in his next life is to be a literal rock and have his members enthusiastically support this lazy ambition by constantly bringing him food, wrapping him in blankets, and ensuring his sacred nap times are never interrupted? It is an incredibly sophisticated form of being spoiled, the "I'm too small and tired for this world" maneuver. But the pampering doesn't just stop at letting him sleep. It extends into every single facet of their daily lives, deeply rooted in a profound, unspoken mutual respect. Consider his relationship with Jin, the only member older than him. Jin has spent a decade serving as Yoongi's eternal roommate, silently and selflessly accommodating his quirks, making sure he eats when he locks himself inside his Genius Lab studio for days on end, and treating him with a gentle, protective tenderness that completely shatters Yoongi's tough guy persona. And what about the younger members? Jimin, despite being younger, treats Yoongi like a fragile porcelain doll, constantly clinging to him, fixing his hair, and giggling at his absolute lamest dad jokes just to make him feel validated. J-Hope, the group's radiant sunshine and the other half of the legendary soap duo, acts as Yoongi's personal, full-time hype man, screaming his name with such exaggerated enthusiasm every time Yoongi simply breathes or does a tiny dance move, creating a constant ego-boosting environment that Yoongi pretends to hate but secretly cannot live without. You can physically see the joy radiating from Yoongi's face, his shoulders doing that iconic little shimmy whenever Hoseok showers him with compliments. Even the wildly strong golden maknae Jungkook, who could easily overpower anyone in the group, turns into a compliant, adoring puppy whenever Yoongi asks for a favor, carefully picking him up or carrying him around like he weighs absolutely nothing during their concert encores. Have you noticed how during the cooking episodes of Run BTS, Yoongi transforms into an arrogant Michelin star chef who loudly demands that everyone witness his culinary genius? He acts so delightfully spoiled in those moments, aggressively seeking praise for simply sprinkling salt on a steak or flipping a pancake. And the most beautiful part is that his members give him exactly what he wants, roaring with applause as if he just invented fire. Why do they spoil him so deeply and unconditionally? Is it just because he is undeniably cute when he drops his guard? No, it goes so much deeper than that. It is an incredibly profound, emotional acknowledgement of his past struggles and the astronomical sacrifices he made for the team. The members know intimately about the days when a young, hungry Min Yoongi had to choose between paying for a bus ride home or eating a cheap bowl of noodles, working grueling delivery jobs that eventually led to a devastating, chronically painful shoulder injury he silently endured for years so the group's trajectory wouldn't be jeopardized. They know the impenetrable darkness he fought through, the sleepless nights he spent producing the very tracks that catapulted them to international superstardom, pouring his blood, sweat, and literal tears into the sonic foundation of BTS. So now, when he wants a specific piece of meat grilled for him at a Korean barbecue restaurant, they rush to cook it perfectly to his liking. When he demands validation for a mundane task he completed, they shower him with the loudest applause imaginable. When he claims his legs hurt and he needs to sit down during a physically demanding variety show game, they quickly fetch him a chair and a pillow. They spoil him because they recognize that the fierce, unyielding tiger who fought the entire world to protect their dreams deserves the absolute luxury of finally resting and being soft. He acts completely spoiled by constantly demanding to be recognized for his cooking skills, by throwing absolute tantrums when a game feels unfair, and shamelessly using his adorable Lil Meow Meow persona to bypass all the hard work. But he does so wrapped in the secure, unwavering knowledge that his members will never judge him for it. This beautiful, tear-jerking dynamic firmly places him at number 6, a man who conquered the harsh, unforgiving music industry with biting lyrics and an iron will, only to willingly surrender his fierce independence to be happily pampered, fed, and babied by the 6 men who love him more than life itself. Are you prepared to discover who exactly outranks this pampered cat in the wild hierarchy of the BTS household?
Number 5. J-Hope, the flawless dance captain, secretly demanding absolute emotional pampering. Have you ever witnessed the terrifying, razor-sharp gaze of BTS's ultimate dance captain when someone misses a single beat during a grueling practice session, only to see that exact same fiercely strict man turn into a trembling, screaming, wildly dramatic little acorn the very second a tiny, harmless bug enters the room? Are you ready to unravel the fascinating duality of the man who literally fuels the entire group with his boundless energy, yet secretly requires an astronomical amount of emotional validation and coddling to survive his own perfectionism? Let's dive deep into the incredibly vibrant, surprisingly fragile universe of Jung Ho-suk, universally adored as J-Hope, who comfortably dances his way right into the number 5 spot on our ultimate OT7 ranking. Now, you might be scratching your head in pure confusion, asking yourself how the literal sunshine of BTS, the unofficial co-leader who meticulously cleans the dorms, organizes the schedules, and constantly sacrifices his own comfort to make sure every single member is smiling, could possibly be considered spoiled. Well, dear viewers, prepare to have your mind completely blown, because J-Hope's version of being spoiled is an absolute masterclass in emotional manipulation disguised as pure, unfiltered vulnerability. Unlike traditional divas who demand expensive gifts or physical pampering, Ho-suk demands something far more precious and rare: the undivided, fiercely protective emotional energy of his 6 brothers. He has masterfully cultivated an environment where his happiness, his comfort, and his dramatic reactions are the absolute top priority of the entire group. Just think about it for a second. Have you ever watched a Run BTS episode involving heights, sudden loud noises, or God forbid a haunted house? While the brave members like Jungkook or Jin might naturally take the lead, Ho-suk completely abandons all his responsibilities as an older Hyung, instantly morphing into a helpless, incredibly vocal baby who absolutely demands to be shielded from the terrifying world. Remember the legendary zombie survival episode? While others were laughing or fighting back, Ho-suk was literally on the floor, abandoning his shoe, screaming at the top of his lungs, and physically clinging to the cameraman and his members for dear life. And what did the members do? Did they mock him or tell him to toughen up?
Absolutely not. They surrounded him, patted his back, held his trembling hands, and treated his fear with the utmost seriousness, indulging his wild dramatics as if he were a precious, delicate glass figurine that could shatter at any moment. He acts fabulously spoiled by shamelessly refusing to do anything scary, proudly declaring his cowardice, and fully expecting the others to do the heavy lifting when it comes to bravery. But the true, tear-jerking extent of how deeply spoiled J-Hope is shines the brightest when we look at his staggering need for emotional validation. Hoseok gives 200% of his soul to making others laugh. His iconic, deafening sound effects and exaggerated physical comedy are the heartbeat of BTS's chaotic variety shows. Because he gives so much of his energy away, he expects an immediate, equal return on his investment. If he makes a joke and the room is quiet, he will literally pout, cross his arms, and make this incredibly adorable high-pitched whining noise until someone, usually Jimin or RM, scrambles to laugh and reassure him that he is indeed the funniest person alive. He constantly seeks their praise, eagerly showing them his dance moves or his incredibly fashionable new outfits, waiting with wide, expectant eyes like a child showing their parents a drawing, fully demanding to be showered with compliments. And they spoil him rotten by giving him exactly that. They are his personal choir of hype men, constantly yelling his name at the top of their lungs just to see that radiant, heart-shaped smile appear on his beautiful face. This emotional pampering reached its absolute, undeniable peak during his historic solo debut era. When Hoseok was preparing to headline Lollapalooza in Chicago, an epic, historical event famously dubbed Hobbypalooza, he was crumbling under the immense, crushing weight of unprecedented pressure. He couldn't sleep, he couldn't eat, and the vibrant sunshine we all knew was fading into a shadow of anxious exhaustion. So what happened? Jimin literally flew all the way across the globe, crossing oceans and multiple time zones, not to perform, but simply to sit beside him, hold his hand, make him laugh, and physically feed him food because Hoseok was too nervous to chew. Jimin completely dropped everything in his own busy schedule to act as Hoseok's personal emotional support blanket, and Hoseok fully absorbed that top-tier pampering, instantly returning to his glowing, confident self the moment his younger member arrived. That is the ultimate textbook definition of being emotionally spoiled. He is spoiled because the members know a devastatingly heartbreaking truth. Hoseok is fundamentally a perfectionist who is ruthlessly cruel to himself. He pushes his body to the absolute breaking point in the practice room, obsessing over every single angle, every single breath, and every single beat to ensure BTS delivers a flawless, legendary performance for armies across the globe. He carries the immense burden of being the group's psychological battery, constantly forcing himself to be happy and energetic even when he is utterly exhausted, just so the team's morale doesn't drop. The other 6 members see this monumental sacrifice every single day. They see the dark circles under his eyes when he works late into the night perfecting his raps in the studio. They see the sheer panic in his eyes when he fears he has made a microscopic mistake on stage. So they have made an unspoken, unbreakable brotherhood pact to spoil him entirely in the emotional realm. They let him be loud. They let him be an absolute diva about his expensive clothes. They let him complain dramatically when he is slightly tired and validate his every single emotion because they desperately want him to know that he doesn't always have to be the strong, unshakable pillar of joy. By indulging his exaggerated fears, cheering hysterically for his outfits, flying across the world just to hold his hand, and babying him whenever he feels even slightly down, they are wrapping him in an impenetrable, warm cocoon of unconditional love. He fiercely claims the number 5 spot on this countdown because while he might be the strict, terrifying dance leader who commands the global stage with the presence of a god, behind closed doors, he is a deeply sensitive, profoundly dramatic soul who shamelessly demands his brother's endless affection, proudly throwing a cute tantrum if he doesn't get his daily dose of praise, and resting comfortably in the absolute knowledge that his 6 devoted bandmates will cross oceans just to make sure their precious sunshine never stops glowing. Who could possibly demand more attention than this dramatic dance king? Keep your eyes glued to the screen, prepare your hearts for more emotional revelations, and brace yourselves because the absolute hierarchy of chaos in this household is only getting more intensely fascinating as we climb higher up the list.
Number 4. Jin, the worldwide handsome eldest brother, secretly aging backwards into the ultimate fake-maknae. Have you ever witnessed the absolute reality-bending paradox of a grown man who's literally the oldest member of the biggest musical group on the entire planet, unapologetically throwing himself onto the floor, kicking his long, athletic legs in the air, and screaming at the top of his lungs just because he lost a simple, low-stakes game of Halligalli? Welcome to the hilariously chaotic, overwhelmingly endearing, and endlessly fascinating world of Kim Seok-jin, globally celebrated as worldwide handsome, who majestically and loudly claims the number 4 spot on our definitive OT7 countdown. Now, if you are even slightly familiar with the incredibly strict, deeply ingrained age hierarchy of South Korean culture, you might be absolutely baffled by how the eldest brother, the highly respected maknae of BTS, constantly acts with the unfiltered, pure, chaotic energy of a fiercely spoiled 5-year-old child. By all traditional cultural standards and expectations, Jin should logically be the stern, untouchable patriarch of the group, issuing quiet, authoritative commands and demanding absolute, unquestioning respect from his 6 younger dongsangs. Instead, he has masterfully orchestrated the most brilliant, heartwarming psychological plot twist in K-pop history. He has successfully conditioned the younger members to treat him like the ultimate pampered fake-maknae, who requires constant verbal validation, endless exaggerated compliments about his breathtaking visuals, and absolute submission whenever he launches into one of his legendary rapid-fire, high-pitched ranting sessions. Let's carefully dissect the sheer, unadulterated genius behind his unapologetically spoiled behavior. Jin's entire public persona and brand are built on a rock-solid foundation of supreme, almost comical self-love and unshakable confidence. He doesn't just quietly want you to think he is handsome. He absolutely demands that you acknowledge it verbally, loudly, and as frequently as humanly possible. Have you ever watched a high-profile international interview where a foreign host asks a completely unrelated, serious question about their music, and Jin somehow flawlessly pivots the entire conversation just to point at his own face, boldly declaring himself worldwide handsome while throwing a dramatic, sweeping, flying kiss to the camera, fully expecting his members to either cringe in absolute defeat or hype him up to the heavens? He acts fabulously spoiled by refusing to show even a single ounce of false modesty, completely forcing the other 6 members to endure his daily theatrical monologues about his own flawless reflection in the mirror. And when it comes to fiercely competitive variety show games on Run BTS, oh boy, prepare your eardrums for the ultimate display of spoiled theatrics. Jin is intensely, relentlessly competitive, but the very moment he starts losing, the fundamental rules of reality completely dissolve into thin air. He will blatantly and shamelessly cheat right in front of the referees. He will physically tackle the towering younger members like RM or Jungkook. His face and ears will rapidly turn the vibrant color of a ripe tomato, and he will unleash a spectacular, breathless, supersonic rap of unbelievable complaints that completely drowns out anyone trying to apply basic logic to the situation. And what is the most beautiful, hilarious part of this entire spectacle? The younger members, especially the usually stoic Suga or the logical RM, will simply stand there, laughing until they literally collapse holding their stomachs, eventually giving in and letting Jin have his absolute way, because arguing with him when he gets into his spoiled brat mode is physically and mentally exhausting. He acts exactly like a spoiled, pampered child who simply must have the final word in every single argument, and his members happily pamper him by letting him win those ridiculous debates, even when he is undeniably, spectacularly, and factually wrong. But underneath all the deafening screaming, the flamboyant flying kisses, and the dramatic gaming tantrums lies a deeply emotional, profoundly tear-jerking truth that explains exactly why the rest of BTS spoils him so unconditionally and relentlessly. You see, Jin wasn't always this
this loud, chaotic, and openly demanding figure. When BTS first formed in their cramped, dilapidated, bug-infested dorm room a decade ago, Jin was a quiet, polite university acting student who was suddenly thrust into a harsh, unforgiving idol training system, living shoulder to shoulder with 6 complete strangers. Recognizing that the younger members were essentially just terrified teenagers practically raising themselves far away from the comforting safety of their families, Jin made the monumental, deeply selfless decision to step up and become their absolute, unshakable rock. He secretly used his own personal allowance from his family to buy expensive groceries to ensure they had meat. He woke up at the crack of dawn to cook massive, nutritious meals to feed their rapidly growing bodies. He literally drove a wide-eyed, shy young Jungkook to his high school entrance and graduation ceremonies. And he silently absorbed the tremendous, crushing pressure of being the eldest without making them feel burdened by his authority. He actively, intentionally shattered the rigid, deeply respected Korean age hierarchy because he possessed the emotional intelligence to know that if he acted like a strict, untouchable elder brother, the team would never develop the unbreakable, vulnerable brotherly bond they desperately needed to survive the brutal, cutthroat music industry. By voluntarily lowering his own status, making himself the easy target of their savage jokes, and acting incredibly silly to break the ice, he gave the younger members the ultimate safe space to breathe, to rebel safely, to make mistakes, and to grow into the confident global superstars they are today. The members know this profoundly, and they carry this immense gratitude in their hearts every single day. They remember the agonizingly long nights Jin spent practicing his vocals and his dancing until his entire body ached, fighting desperately against the cruel, dismissive narrative that he was just a visual member, purely to ensure he wouldn't hold the team's intricate choreography back. They remember clearly how he carried the immense, silent weight of taking care of them when they had absolutely nothing to their names. So, now in the present day, when Jin boldly demands that they buy him expensive meals to celebrate random occasions, or when he forces them to play tennis or go fishing with him on their rare, precious days off, or when he insists they acknowledge his worldwide handsome status for the millionth time on a live broadcast, they eagerly and happily and instantly oblige. They spoil him endlessly because allowing Jin to act like a carefree, demanding, loud, and dramatic fake-maknae is their ultimate way of giving him back the carefree youth and the personal freedom he so willingly and selflessly sacrificed for them all those years ago. They joyfully let him cheat at their games. They aggressively buy him the giant, fluffy RJ plushies he points at in stores, and they laugh uproariously at his classic, deeply uncool dad jokes, because seeing Jin happy, relaxed, and unabashedly spoiled is their ultimate collective joy. He proudly and loudly sits at number 4 because his version of acting spoiled is not born from arrogance or entitlement. It's a brilliantly crafted, wildly entertaining persona that completely masks his immense emotional intelligence and his heart of pure, unadulterated gold, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that sometimes the one who loudly demands the absolute most attention is actually the one who quietly gave the most love when nobody was looking. Are you fully prepared to see who pushes the extreme boundaries of being pampered even further? Stay tuned, hold your breath, and keep your eyes glued to the screen as we officially cross into the highly anticipated top 3, where the absolute chaos and the overwhelming affection reach astronomical, unprecedented new heights.
Number 3. Jimin, the angelic mochi, secretly weaponizing his pout for absolute domination. Have you ever seen a grown man completely command a room, not with shouting or strict authority, but simply by dropping his shoulders, jetting out his lower lip, and emitting the tiniest, most devastatingly cute sigh known to human existence? Prepare to enter the enchanting, emotionally manipulative, and completely irresistible orbit of Park Jimin, the mesmerizing lead dancer and angelic vocalist of BTS, who gracefully and undeniably glides right into the number 3 spot on our ultimate countdown.
If you look at Jimin's public persona, you see the breathtakingly elegant performer who commands the global stage with the fierce intensity of a contemporary swan, radiating pure, unadulterated charisma and explosive energy. But the absolute second he steps off that stage and returns to the comforting safety of his 6 bandmates, that fierce swan instantly devolves into a soft, extremely needy, and aggressively affectionate little chick who actively demands to be the literal center of their universe. Jimin's specific brand of being spoiled is a masterful psychological art form built entirely on physical proximity and emotional tethering. Unlike Jin, who loudly demands verbal praise, or Suga, who weaponizes his lethargy, Jimin demands physical and emotional pampering of the highest, most intense degree. Let's talk about the legendary, universally acknowledged phenomenon within the BTS fandom known simply as Jimin time. In any normal, functioning professional group, if one member is chronically, unapologetically late to every single schedule, meeting, and flight, there would be serious consequences, fines, or at least massive, explosive arguments. But what happens when Jimin takes an extra 45 minutes to perfectly style his hair and choose his accessories while the rest of the group is sitting in the van, fully dressed and waiting? Do they yell at him? Do they leave without him? Absolutely not. The members just collectively sigh, look at their watches, and warmly accept that this is just the inevitable tax they must pay for having Jimin in their lives. When he finally boards the van, flashing that signature blindingly bright eye smile and offering a soft, melodic apology, any frustration instantly melts into pure affection. They completely spoil him by bending the rigid constructs of time itself just to accommodate his leisurely pace. And then there is the undeniable, overwhelmingly powerful weapon of his physical affection. Jimin physically cannot survive without constant, reassuring touch. He treats his members like personal, breathing pieces of furniture, casually draping his entire body over RM's broad shoulders, crawling into Yulin Yi's lap even when the older rapper is trying to work, or tightly clinging to Taeyoung's back like a koala. He acts incredibly spoiled by fully expecting them to support his body weight and return his affection on demand, and the absolute kicker is that if a member accidentally ignores his hug or brushes him off because they are busy, Jimin will unleash his ultimate world-ending weapon, the legendary, devastating Jimin pout. His cheeks will puff out, his entire demeanor will visibly deflate, and he will emit a tiny, heartbroken whine that instantly triggers a massive guilt trip in whoever dared to reject him. Within seconds, the offending member will scramble to apologize, frantically pulling him into a massive hug just to restore his radiant smile. Even the golden maknae, Jungkook, who is biologically younger and physically much larger, treats Jimin like a delicate, incredibly precious baby who must be protected at all costs, constantly picking him up, spinning him around, and letting Jimin use him as a personal, muscular cushion. Do you remember the legendary Golden Closet film in Tokyo? Jungkook literally transformed into Jimin's personal, dedicated cameraman, navigating the busy subways, carrying the heavy bags, and meticulously editing a cinematic masterpiece purely to showcase Jimin's ethereal beauty to the entire world, all while Jimin playfully ran around the glowing streets of Japan like a completely carefree, pampered prince. Jimin acts spoiled because he actively refuses to act his age, completely rejecting his status as an older brother to the maknae line to ensure he receives the maximum amount of coddling possible. But underneath this adorable, needy, and physically demanding exterior lies a profoundly emotional, incredibly tear-jerking narrative that perfectly explains why the other 6 men spoil him so fiercely and unconditionally. They spoil him because they vividly remember the excruciatingly painful early days of their debut, when Jimin was constantly teetering on the edge of being cut from the final lineup. They remember the terrifyingly fragile, insecure young boy who would practice his vocals and acrobatics in the dark dance studio until 3 in the morning, sleeping only 2 hours a night on the hard floor, desperately trying to prove his worth to the company. They remember his agonizing, heartbreaking battles with severe perfectionism and body image issues, heavily restricting his diet just to fit the unrealistic, cruel standards of the idol industry. During those dark, suffocating times, the members watched him push his physical and mental limits to the absolute breaking point, completely terrified that he would collapse from exhaustion. Because he was so incredibly cruel and unforgiving to himself back then, the members have made it their lifelong, unspoken mission to be the ultimate source of softness, leniency, and relentless validation in his life. Furthermore, they pamper him because Jimin is unequivocally the emotional anchor of BTS. Whenever a member is crying on stage, struggling with a personal crisis, or feeling overwhelmed by the crushing weight of their global fame, Jimin is always the very first one there. He's the one who rushes across the massive stadium stage to wipe away their tears, the one who stays up all night listening to their deepest anxieties, and the one who constantly leaves small, encouraging gifts on their beds. He pours every single ounce of his emotional energy into making sure his 6 brothers feel loved, seen, and protected. So in return, they spoil him completely rotten. They blindly buy him the expensive designer rings and clothes he casually points at. They immediately rush to pick him up and dust him off when he inevitably laughs so hard he falls out of his chair during a live broadcast. They patiently wait for him when he is running absurdly late, and they shower him with the endless physical affection he desperately craves. He rightfully and triumphantly claims the number 3 spot on this list because his version of being spoiled is a beautiful, reciprocal cycle of immense love. He demands absolute, undivided emotional pampering from his brothers, fully knowing that they will eagerly provide it, because they all intimately know that the sweet, angelic mochi who glued their broken pieces together in the past deserves to be treated like the absolute center of the universe. Are you ready to see who dares to outrank this master of emotional domination? The stakes are getting unimaginably high as we cross into the final 2, so prepare your hearts, take a deep breath, and hold on tight for the ultimate showdown of BTS's most pampered royalty.
Number 2. V. The free-spirited visual prince, secretly commanding the entire group with his irresistible puppy dog eyes. Have you ever witnessed a man who possesses the breathtaking, almost intimidating visuals of a literal runway model? A deep, soulful baritone voice that could easily belong to a classic jazz legend, and the completely unpredictable, free-spirited soul of a whimsical fairy who genuinely believes he can communicate with the birds. Prepare to completely surrender your heart to the mesmerizing, beautifully eccentric, and undeniably pampered universe of Kim Tae-young, universally adored as V, who effortlessly and dramatically claims the number 2 spot on our ultimate OT7 countdown. If we are talking about the absolute peak of being treated like royalty, we absolutely have to discuss the unique, mind-boggling phenomenon that is the tie-tie privilege. Within the deeply complex ecosystem of the BTS household, Taeyoung operates on a completely different frequency, living in his own magical dimension where traditional rules, schedules, and logical expectations simply do not apply. And the most fascinating part is that the other 6 members actively, fiercely protect this magical dimension at all costs. To understand just how deeply spoiled Taeyoung is, you first have to understand his absolute mastery of the puppy dog technique. Whenever Taeyoung wants something, whether it is a bite of someone else's carefully prepared food, the most comfortable seat in the van, or simply an unreasonable amount of attention, he doesn't throw a loud, demanding tantrum like Jin, and he doesn't pout aggressively like Jimin. Instead, he simply widens his massive, soulful eyes, drops his voice into that ridiculously cute, soft register, and stares silently at his target until their resolve completely crumbles into dust.
Have you ever watched a behind-the-scenes video where the members are eating a limited amount of snacks? Taehyung will casually stroll over, open his mouth like a baby bird, and without a single word of protest, members like Jin, Hoseok, RM, or Jungkook will instinctively feed him the absolute best, most delicious bite of their own food, completely abandoning their own hunger just to see him chew happily. He is the undisputed king of weaponizing his own innocence, and his members are delightfully, hopelessly trapped in his spell. Let's take a nostalgic journey to their legendary travel shows like Bon Voyage or In the Soup. While members like Yoongi and Jin are sweating over a hot stove cooking massive feasts, and RM is struggling to clean up the mess while coordinating the itinerary, what is our beloved visual prince usually doing? He is out on a boat singing softly to the mountains, painting beautiful abstract art on a massive canvas, taking moody vintage photographs of the scenery, or aggressively napping in the warm sun. And when the producers finally ask him to contribute to the household chores, his members give him the absolute easiest, most minuscule tasks imaginable, like simply washing a single strawberry, pouring a glass of water, or pressing the button on the blender to make melon juice. When he successfully completes these microscopic tasks, the other 6 men erupt into wild, deafening applause, as if he has just successfully defused a bomb or cured a major global disease. They spoil him to the absolute core by completely shielding him from the mundane, exhausting realities of daily chores, perfectly content to let him exist purely as their beautiful, chaotic muse. And let's not forget his legendary, luxurious taste. During his iconic Gucci Boy era, Taehyung would casually stroll into dance practices wearing astronomically expensive designer clothes that looked like they belonged in a museum, treating them like casual, everyday pajamas. When he wants an expensive item, he has zero shame in actively and heavily hinting at his members to buy it for him. Remember when he blatantly manipulated Jimin into buying him an expensive winter coat? Or when he guilt-tripped the older members into paying for his elaborate meals just by flashing his signature boxy smile? He acts completely spoiled by assuming that his mere presence is enough of a payment, and the members hilariously enable this behavior by constantly opening their wallets for him. But the absolute tear-jerking core of why Kim Taehyung is pampered to such an astronomical degree goes far, far deeper than just sharing food or buying designer clothes. It stems from a profound, fiercely protective love that the members hold for his incredibly sensitive, beautifully fragile soul. You see, Taehyung's mind operates with a pure, unfiltered innocence that is incredibly rare and dangerous in the cutthroat, heavily manufactured K-pop industry. He feels emotions with a staggering, overwhelming intensity. When he is happy, he is a blinding supernova of joy, but when he is sad, he completely shuts down, hiding in his own metaphorical cave. The members intimately know the devastatingly heavy burdens he has carried behind his breathtaking smile. They were there during the excruciatingly painful era when he lost his beloved grandmother, the woman who practically raised him for half of his life, having to silently hide his shattering grief from the millions of screaming fans while performing perfectly on stage. They were there when he took on the terrifying challenge of debuting as an actor in the historical drama Hwarang, watching him cry in the dark dorm room because he felt immense pressure and was completely terrified of embarrassing the BTS name. During those vulnerable, fragile moments, the other 6 members rallied around him like a fiercely impenetrable shield of love. They constantly reassured him, wiped away his silent tears, and promised him that they would always be his safe harbor. Because he is so deeply connected to his emotions, he cannot physically sleep when he feels lonely or scared. He acts incredibly spoiled by casually wandering into the other members' bedrooms in the middle of the quiet night, unapologetically climbing into their beds and demanding that they hold him until he falls asleep. Do you realize how much patience and profound love it takes for exhausted, overworked young men to share their precious dangerous, limited sleeping space just because their eccentric brother feels a little lonely? Jimin and Jungkook, his eternal soulmates, have spent countless nights acting as his personal human pillows, and even the strict, independent Yoongi has softly admitted to holding Taeyoung's hand in the dark just to calm his severe anxieties. They spoil him relentlessly because they desperately want to protect his unique, artistic, beautifully weird perspective on the world. They let him invent his own vocabulary, affectionately dubbed Tai-Tai language, never once correcting his grammatical mistakes, but instead patiently learning to understand his unique syntax. They let him completely hijack their live broadcasts with his eclectic jazz music recommendations. They patiently wait for him when he suddenly stops in the middle of a busy street to take a picture of a random dandelion, and they indulge his every single dramatic whim because seeing Kim Taeyoung exist fully as his authentic, weird, unashamed self is one of their greatest collective triumphs. He gracefully, proudly, and undeniably sits at number 2 on this countdown because he has masterfully trained the biggest boy band in the world to cater to his emotional and physical comforts using nothing but his boxy smile, his soulful eyes, and a heart so incredibly pure that his 6 brothers would gladly give him the entire world on a glittering silver platter just to ensure his beautiful spirit never ever loses its magic. Are you finally ready to discover who could possibly surpass this pampered prince to claim the ultimate throne? Brace yourselves, because the final, undisputed king of this countdown is a revelation that will absolutely melt your heart into a puddle. Number 1. Jungkook, the golden crowned sovereign, loved unconditionally, raised by 6 fathers. This is the ultimate peak of our countdown, the moment you have all been waiting for, the absolute undisputed sovereign who sits comfortably on the golden throne of being completely, unapologetically, and universally spoiled within the historic hierarchy of BTS. There could truly be no other name to occupy this prestigious number 1 spot than the magnificent golden maknae himself, Jungkook. If you have ever closely observed the breathtakingly intense dynamics of this 7-member global phenomenon, you know that the phrase maknae on top was practically invented specifically to describe the hilarious, heartwarming, and completely unmatched power that this young man wields over his 6 older brothers. Jungkook doesn't just act spoiled in a subtle, quiet, or manipulative manner. He exists as a beautifully pampered prince who has spent more than a decade being utterly adored, fiercely protected, and aggressively indulged by 6 men who quite literally poured their entire youth, love, and energy into raising him from a shy, wide-eyed child into the global icon he is today. The psychological dynamic here is completely fascinating because in a traditional South Korean household or corporate structure, the youngest is legally and culturally expected to carry out the heaviest burdens, run the mundane errands, bow deeply to their elders, and speak with the utmost formal restraint. But within the beautifully chaotic universe of BTS, Jungkook has completely flipped the entire script, operating with a magnificent, carefree freedom that allows him to playfully tease, physically tackle, mockingly imitate, and affectionately bully his older brothers whenever he pleases, knowing with absolute certainty that they will never ever genuinely scold him because they are completely helpless against his charms. Have you ever watched a Run BTS episode where a high-stakes, fiercely competitive game is being played and the older members are ruthlessly sabotaging each other, shouting in frustration and plotting elaborate betrayals, only for Jungkook to suddenly step forward with that radiant, innocent, bunny-toothed smile? The very moment the youngest expresses even a microscopic desire to win a specific prize, whether it's a shiny new electronics item, a delicious plate of Korean beef, or simply the satisfaction of victory, the entire competitive spirit of the older 6 members instantly evaporates into thin air as they collectively, almost unconsciously, bend the rules, sacrifice their own chances, and orchestrate the entire game just to ensure their precious youngest brother walks away completely happy and satisfied. He acts brilliantly and hilariously spoiled by fully embracing his role as the physical powerhouse of the group, casually lifting his older brothers over his broad shoulders, playfully tossing them onto couches, and using them as literal wrestling props during rehearsals, while they simply laugh uproariously and proudly brag about how strong and athletic their baby has become. Think about the iconic food dynamics within the dorms. Jungkook has famously developed an insatiable, legendary appetite, and over the years he has mastered the art of walking over to any older member's plate, staring intensely at their food with his giant, glittering puppy dog eyes, and casually swiping the best morsel right out from under their chopsticks, a borderline criminal offense in Korean dining etiquette that would cause massive outrage in any other group, but in BTS, it is met with nothing but fond, indulgent smiles, and Jin or Yoongi immediately offering him even more food from their own portions. This unprecedented level of absolute, unconditional pampering is not born out of mere laziness or simple favoritism. It is rooted in a deeply emotional, profoundly tear-jerking history that serves as the beautiful foundational origin story of BTS itself. You see, when Jungkook packed his small bags and left his hometown of Busan to pursue a wildly uncertain dream in the bustling metropolis of Seoul, he was a painfully shy, devastatingly insecure 15-year-old child who didn't even have a fully formed sense of self. He was so intensely overwhelmed by the loud, crowded, and unfamiliar environment that he would literally wait until the other members were completely asleep in the middle of the night just so he could quietly wash his face and shower in the dark bathroom without having to make awkward eye contact with anyone. Recognizing the profound vulnerability and the crushing loneliness of this young boy who was practically sacrificing his entire childhood far away from the comforting safety of his mother and father, the 6 older members made a monumental, sacred, and unspoken covenant to collectively become his family, his guardians, his teachers, and his fiercest protectors. Kim Namjoon became his ultimate musical inspiration, the brilliant philosophical role model who single-handedly convinced Jungkook to sign with Big Hit Entertainment over dozens of richer, more established agencies. Kim Sek-jin became his maternal anchor, literally waking up early in the morning to cook him warm meals, packing his school lunches, and driving him his school, while constantly reminding him of his worth. Do you remember his high school graduation day, an iconic milestone where all 6 Hyungs proudly attended, behaving exactly like overly enthusiastic, tearful parents taking thousands of photos, and later spending their hard-earned money to buy him a massive, legendary feast of black bean noodles to celebrate? Min Yoongi became his stoic, silent protector, quietly buying him delicious meals when the company was broke, ensuring his physical health was monitored, and instilling in him a deep, unshakable artistic discipline. Jung Ho-sok became his radiant sunshine, patiently teaching him how to channel his raw, explosive energy into sharp, flawless dance movements while wrapping him in emotional security. Park Jimin and Kim Tae-young became his ultimate playmates and fierce older brothers, constantly shielding him from the harsh, cold judgments of the outside world, holding his hand when he cried from homesickness, and filling his daily life with laughter, music, and chaotic joy. Jungkook has openly, emotionally confessed on multiple occasions that he is a literal human mosaic constructed from the unique personalities, habits, and virtues of his 6 older brothers. He speaks like Namjoon, cooks like Jin, shares the unyielding work ethic of Yoongi, exudes the vibrant passion of Ho-sok, possesses the immense empathy of Jimin, and embraces the free-spirited artistic flair of Tae-young. Because they literally raised him with their own hands, pouring their own blood, sweat, and tears into protecting his innocence from the cutthroat, predatory nature of the entertainment industry, they still look at him today, even as he sells out massive global football stadiums, breaks historical streaming records on Spotify with his solo masterpieces like Seven and his chart-topping album Golden, and stands as a towering, universally recognized pop titan. They do not see him as a global superstar. They see that exact same tiny, vulnerable 15-year-old boy who used to cry because he missed his mother. They spoil him endlessly, because seeing Jungkook happy, confident, and completely secure is the ultimate undeniable proof that they succeeded in their most important mission as a group. When he throws a playful tantrum on camera, when he playfully refuses to do what they ask, or when he boldly demands that they buy him expensive snacks or praise his latest artistic achievement, they eagerly, joyfully, and instantly indulge his every single whim, because his happiness is their ultimate reward. Even during their live broadcasts, you can constantly observe the older members staring at him with pure, unadulterated adoration, laughing at his most ridiculous jokes, and treating him like an absolute treasure that must never be tarnished. He rightfully, spectacularly, and indisputably claims the absolute #1 spot on this countdown, because he is the crown jewel of BTS, a magnificent testament to the power of unconditional, brotherly love, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that while he might be the fiercely powerful, global-conquering golden maknae who holds the global music industry in the palm of his hand, behind the closed doors of his home, he will forever remain the most deeply cherished, most fiercely protected, and most spectacularly spoiled baby in the entire universe, wrapped eternally in the unbreakable, loving embrace of the 6 older brothers who gave him the world.